Other than the V7, Vatic also has the Flash lineup of paddles. While the V7 is a traditional elongated offering, the Flash paddles have what's called a hybrid shape. It gets this name because the total length of the paddle sits about 0.2 to 0.3 inches shorter than an elongated paddle, so lengthwise it's in between the standard and elongated shape paddles. Now generally, standard shape paddles are quicker to swing, while elongated paddles provide more power and extra reach. The hybrid paddles actually lean more lengthwise to the elongated paddles, so what they try to do is provide a quicker swing speed without sacrificing too much reach and power. In terms of comparing the V7 versus the Flash, I definitely noticed this difference. The Flash was quicker to swing, and this was most noticeable when at the net. On the other hand, the V7 definitely had more power. I felt like I could generate more power on baseline drives and serves. Power-wise, I actually thought the Flash was too soft for me, and I needed to add lead tape to it to get it to my liking. As for the difference in reach, I've heard some people say that they didn't really notice the difference in length and were able to adjust to the shorter reach very easily. Personally for me, I'm not sure if it was psychological because I knew there was a difference, but it took me several play sessions until I could get used to the Flash. I felt myself miss-hitting shots at the top near the edge guard several times before I got more adjusted to the Flash, but even so, I still feel like there's a small but noticeable difference in length whenever I switch between the Flash and V7, so I would classify the hybrid paddles with having a slightly smaller sweet spot than the elongated ones. The surface material and weave pattern is the same between the two paddles, so I didn't notice any changes in spin. But the other big difference between the two is the shape. It looks similar to the Yola Hyperion with a rounded top, but the Flash uses the same mold as the 6-0 paddles, where the top corners flare out slightly more to the sides. Now since we are on the topic of hybrid paddle shapes, there's actually one more paddle I wanted to talk about, and that is the new Rhombus R1 Pulsar that is releasing later this month. It's going to come in two handle length options, 5.25 inches and 5.5 inches, but both will use the same shape as the R1.16. I was able to try the 5.25 inch handle, which essentially made the paddle the same length as the hybrid shapes, but without the tapered edges. I believe those tapered edges are marketed as widening the sweet spot, but I didn't notice that in my playtest between the three brands. If you put the R1 Pulsar side by side with the hybrid paddles, you can barely notice the taper on the corners, and the paddles don't really seem to be wider there. I do think Rhombus is onto something in mimicking the hybrid shapes without trying to make a new mold for the paddles, by instead just shortening the handle by a little bit to bring the overall length down. I was able to spend time demoing the 6-0 Double Black Diamond 16mm and R1 Pulsar alongside the Vatic Flash 16mm, and as far as how I felt about them, I think they are all similar with small but noticeable differences, and don't think you can go wrong with any of them. The first two I tried were the 6-0 and Vatic paddles, and I honestly didn't like either of them when I first tried them out. I found the power to be lacking from what I was used to, and the paddles lacked stability when hitting shots. I ended up adding lead and felt they played best when I added 0.15 ounces of lead strips from the sides down to the throat on both sides to increase the power and more importantly the stability of the paddles. I thought the 6-0 paddle had more pop and power and a bit more stability out of the box, while Vatic was softer with a stiffer feel. Vatic was also initially my least favorite of the three and benefited the most once lead tape was added, since without added weight, shots just didn't feel very substantial. As for Rhombus, I still think their paddles produce more spin than the other brands with a plusher feel, and the R1 Pulsar is no exception. It was also the only one I didn't find to have issues with stability out of the box, so I didn't find the need to add any lead to the throat, but I did add it to the sides for more power, since I found it to be just as soft as the Vatic. Price-wise, I think with discount codes, they are similar enough in price to each other that you shouldn't consider that when deciding between the three. If possible, I would recommend trying out all three to get a feel for which one you would prefer to make your choice. But like I said earlier, you really can't go wrong with any of them, and don't think you can make a bad choice here. If I had to pick one out of the three to use, I would go with the Rhombus R1 Pulsar, because I think it has the best feel when hitting shot. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to try Vatic's new 14mm flash paddle, which has a different surface weave pattern, but from what I've heard from people who do use it, it's not as forgiving as the 16mm sweet spot, but it's got more pop and swings quicker. I haven't heard anything about the new surface weave providing more or less spin, but hopefully this is something I'll be able to try myself in the future. As for how I feel about the Vatic Flash versus the V7, I still prefer the V7, and similarly, the R3 over the R1 Pulsar. I just prefer elongated paddles in general over the hybrid shape ones because I like the small amount of added reach and like having that extra plow through on baseline drives. While it was fun for me to experiment with different lead tape setups with the hybrid shape paddles, I did like how for the V7, I could just use it out of the box and not worry too much about adjusting the weight. If you do want to check out Vatic, 60, or Rhombus paddles, I've linked discount codes in the video description below.
Wow, scary. They're big.